call to order the
Either will Ted Cartfields.
All right, I think we have Councilman Frank Koser here to speak with us this evening.
Gentlemen,
Right.
it's always a pleasure to come back here. As you guys know, last year we did away with the annual tribute to the committee banquet, so we decided to replace that with everyone getting a gift card, and everyone loved that so much that we decided to do it again this year. So once again, on behalf of council, we thank you for your service. As I know better than anyone else on council does, that the Planning Commission does invaluable work. We count on you guys for so much, and we really do appreciate it. So we've got gift cards to Franco's for each of you, and if I'm allowed to approach, I will hand one to each of you.
No problem.
I'll put my mask on then.
I'm smiling under here. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to speak.
I shook hands, but we don't want to break any
protocol
protocol to go to the governor.
Thanks, Frank.
This is all recorded.
That's what I mean.
Exactly.
Once again, thanks, guys. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Thank you,
Thank
Frank.
you,
All right. I guess, are there any changes to the minutes from the July 9th, 2020 regular meeting? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that the minutes to the July 9th, 2020 regular meeting be approved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any reports and correspondence, Aaron?
No.
Any site plans or subdivisions filed for review?
No.
Any changes to the agenda?
No.
Any audience comments on items not on the agenda this evening? All right, hearing none. Any old business, any changes, any additions of old business?
No.
All right. Coming into new business. First item is the Planning Commission recommendation of the Tomco final plan, Buckingham Drive.
William and Kelly Tomko own two lots which total 1.573 acres. There are two lots in the hamlet of Springdale plan. This is a lot in Phase 3. This is a lot they purchased in Phase 4 or 5. I can't remember which one it is. What this plan simply does is combine those two pieces of property into one 1.573 acre lot. So it extinguishes the common lot line here and combines it into one. It exceeds our minimum half-acre requirement in the zoning district, and staff's recommending, the Planning Commission recommend to council that the plan be approved, subject to those 4 conditions in my report. Simple re-subdivision.
Anybody here from the developer that wants to
I'm here. We're the
approach the podium? Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Keith Higgins with Keystone Surveying and Mapping. I'm the licensed surveyor on this project. And we were approached by the Tomcos. They're trying to build a swimming pool. And they purchased the property to the north. And the pool needs to be on a continuous lot. So they approached us to consolidate the two lots into one. No issues. We found evidence. Fairly new subdivision. Everything worked pretty good. No issues.
Any commissioner comments or questions? Mr. Higgins? All right, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to the Planning Commission recommendation for Tomco lot consolidation plan number 1 final plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Our second item being the Planning Commission recommendation, waterfall revised final plan on Nancy Drive.
If the Planning Commission recall that this was on the agenda last month, and I had to bring it back to council Planning Commission before it goes back to council. They modified the plan after the Planning Commission approval of the plan last month. If we could switch to the plan, I'll just show you what the change was. This Lot 1, I'm sorry, Lot 1? Yeah, Lot 1 is, last month they had this Lot 1 split into 2 lots. They've decided to not do that, to remove that lot line, so that simply stays the way that it is currently. The plan combines 3 lots here into one where the existing Snyder residence is, and then the other lot up top, Lot 3, is a lot that has frontage and access to the cul-de-sac at the end of Kathy Ann Court. So it's the same plan Planning Commission saw last month with one change. This Lot 1 does not get split into 2 lots. It stays as one big 1.015. It's a little over an acre lot. So I needed to bring it back to you before we took it to council. Planning Commission approved it last month, and staff's recommending we approve it again this month with those 2 simple conditions I have in my recommendation to the Planning Commission. It's a simple lot line shift. No new lots are being created.
And who owns that? Is that a tennis court or?
That's a sport court, and it's my understanding when Mr. Snyder sells Lot 3, the potential future buyer of that lot will raise that sport court and situate their house in there. Mr. Snyder built his sport court back there at one point. Mr. Snyder's house is the house at 103 Nancy Drive. So staff's recommending approval subject to the 2 conditions in my report.
Any commissioner comments, questions? All right, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion the Planning Commission recommend the waterfall plan, Phase 1A final plan with the 2 conditions advised by the planning staff.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, I'm going to get the next folks in here because it's getting crowded.
Sure.
Tom?
Correct.
Yes, the next item is the Planning Commission recommendation, Tomahawk Plan Lots, modification, TP Drive.
I'll go ahead and get started while Ed brings them in. Before you tonight is a recommendation to council for a modification on a potential subdivision at the end of TP Drive. Joe McLaughlin Builders, LLC, is looking to subdivide the existing parcels at the end of TP. It's approximately 16 plus, almost 17 acres in size. There at the end of TP, into 6 separate lots, all individual lots that eventually will be graded out individually with homes built on these individual lots. The reason tonight we're coming before Planning Commission for a recommendation solely for a modification, not for the potential subdivision plan, because it's part of a full-scale land development plan that we'll see at a later time, is because a portion of the Township zoning ordinance states that no new lots can be created on roads that aren't built to township spec. It says if you build a new lot, roads must be upgraded to township specifications. Because all of TP from the extension down here at the intersection with Moccasin up is currently a private drive. It was initially the impression of staff that in order to do this development, the developer would have to pave all of TP Drive, all the way down from Moccasin to the end of their proposed development. But the applicant is requesting a modification from that section of the ordinance to simply pave a portion of TP within the bounds of their development up to township specification with stormwater management and all the things that would come with a standard township road. In conjunction with that, however, they're also proposing to widen the existing portion of TP from the intersection with Moccasin up to where they will begin their paving activities. If you can see some pictures here, this is the current condition of TP Drive as you look down towards the intersection with Moccasin. And then this is the other direction up towards the northern end of TP Drive. It's approximately a 12-foot wide gravel road as it is today. It varies here and there. The applicant is proposing to widen the 12-foot wide gravel portion that they won't be paving to a 20-foot wide to facilitate two-way traffic. You know, we've got potentially or definitely some increased traffic at the end of TP, so we're going to have a wider cartway to facilitate the two-way traffic. With all those things taken into consideration, staff has been working with the applicant, and we're comfortable making a recommendation that the modification be approved, subject to the two conditions listed in my report. The first being that a private road maintenance agreement be created and recorded for all of these 6 new lots as part of the ultimate land development and subdivision plan, and that would be a note on their final plan for recording. We're also placing a condition that no new lots beyond these 6 lots proposed within their Tomahawk plan of lots be created without the entirety of TP being paved up to township specifications. That doesn't mean they can't shift lot lines ultimately, but they just could not create any new lots without paving the entirety of TP. Staff's here to answer questions. We have the applicant here as well.
Seth, I have a question. So the TP road is a township road.
It is a private road.
Private road.
This portion of TP.
What's the typical width of a township road?
It varies depending on the zoning district. They're going to be paving 20 foot, 24-foot cartway.
Curb to curb. Is he able to get to 24?
We believe they have room within the existing right-of-way. They are going to be pushing, as part of their land development plan, this right-of-way here will be shifted to the left slightly. There is a number of very healthy, large trees that they want to try to maintain, as many of them as they can. As part of this paving, you can see them here in green. So in order to accommodate that 24-foot wide cartway, they're going to shift the right-of-way and the road slightly off-center. It'll still be in the right-of-way, but they should have plenty of room to accommodate.
Seth, go ahead.
The proposed subdivision, when it comes after the modification is reviewed and approved by Planning Commission and Council, they're dedicating a 50-foot wide right-of-way, which is also a standard requirement. It's a 40-foot right-of-way now. With their proposed development, they would build that road to township specifications. It would remain private, and it would be within a 50-foot wide right-of-way, like any other standard new subdivision. 50-foot right-of-way, 24-foot cartway.
Does it have to be built to township standards?
Built to
At some
township.
point in the future, when these folks want the township to take it over, it's
ready to go.
ready to go.
But just to be clear, that the cul-de-sac, if you're looking at the aerial, is basically putting it in where those 2 lots come down, right in that.
Approximately in this location, yeah.
Okay.
There's one house at the end of TP that has a pretty long driveway access. We anticipate she'll have somewhat of an improved condition as well. She'll have a shorter driveway, and then she'll immediately tie right into a nice paved cul-de-sac. So a bit of an improvement for her as well.
Seth, the proposed construction of homes, will it be on both sides of TP?
Yes.
And I see Lariat would be behind where the proposed houses will be.
Correct.
That will be unaffected.
Correct. They will not be accessing Lariat. They will only be accessing TP, so we are not requiring that they bring Lariat up to township specification.
So Lariat is a similar type road
To TP.
in TP that accesses that house way in the back.
Correct. Correct. But because they will not be accessing Lariat, we didn't feel it was appropriate for them to have to bring that up to township
All the new
specification.
construction will feed onto TP.
Correct.
And show me again on the plan where the end of the road that will have to be brought up to township standards would be?
This red construction entrance designation here would effectively be where the pavement starts, ends, and then it would be a gravel widening here south down to the intersection with Moccasin. If you look on the aerial, you get a little bit more of a zoomed out. It's again about right here. It's where the paving is going to go north, and then a widened cartway, still gravel, here to the south.
And where's Moccasin?
Moccasin is right here. You can just see on the
Okay.
bottom of the map where that triangular intersection is.
And is there any way we can get them to pave the whole thing from Moccasin the whole way out?
The developer has, we've had that conversation with him, certainly, even from the get-go.
That's sort of,
For these 6 lots, and he can speak to that a little bit further, but he's presented to us that in order to maintain the existing character of the neighborhood, it'd be cost prohibitive. If he were to have to pave that on a per lot shared basis, he'd have to put a dozen plus, if not more, lots back there just to make it worth his while.
it sort of looks second rate.
So there,
Pave, you're gonna gravel, then you're gonna go to pavement. You're probably gonna put some big homes there. It's like, I don't know, I'd rather see the whole thing paved, you're gonna pave it. I mean, how long are we talking? I mean, how many feet for the pave the whole, just up?
Well, the unpaved portion from Moccasin to where the Tomahawk property starts is approximately 500 feet.
Correct.
Their paving
700.
along their frontage is approximately 300 feet. So you're talking about a total of 800 feet of road, 300 feet of which he's...
And how big are these lots gonna be proposed to be?
They vary in size, but at least an acre per lot.
Yeah,
So it look like 1 to 2 acres.
Yeah, with a larger lot here in the middle.
$10 homes. And you're gonna drive down a gravel to a paved road?
now, I'm wondering too, wouldn't that be considered a cul-de-sac? What's the cul-de-sac length? I mean, if we get the road down the road, what's the minimum now? Isn't it, or max 600, isn't it? So we're talking maybe 800?
We are, but
Isn't there a variance? Does it have to-
there's nowhere for the road to go.
Well, my point is that, so if we assume this, then down the road, when the township accepts the road, then we're also going to have to assume that we're taking a longer than expected cul-de-sac.
200 foot
Yeah,
approximately
more.
longer than
Okay.
our standard.
And, okay.
And the houses that are currently on TP, with the widening of the road, will their property be encroached upon?
That widening, go ahead, sir.
The widening can be done within the existing right-of-way. There may be some mailboxes that have to be moved, some driveways repaired, where they, tie into the existing right-of-way, but they should not have to get outside of the existing right-of-way to do the widening of TP.
So it'll disrupt what they're currently using, even though they are aware that there was a right-of-way that could be used.
Utilized.
We have some residents here that
Okay.
you can ask, and they can inform you of that. But the plan is to work within the 40-foot TP right-of-way, not on the private lot, but within the right-of-way.
I got some technical questions on the stormwater. Does the stormwater include the improvements with the road, or is that intended to be for, I assume it's just for the road?
Go ahead, sir.
I think if the developer come up and introduce
Yeah, I mean,
himself,
we can have Joe
yes,
answer.
Whoever speak for the folks on TV, we need to just speak at the mic.
Okay. Mask on, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Joseph Young. I'm with Harshman CE Group. Rocco, it's a storm tank system just for the proposed roadway from the southern property line up through the cul-de-sac.
Okay. So then anything else that's developed for the individual homes, they'll come in, do their own thing, stormwater, et cetera, et cetera.
For the, using the small flows method
Yes,
for each
I
lot.
understand.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. Any other permitting issues with the pond or anything else that's going on here as far as NPDS? It looks fairly straightforward. So.
Yeah, we're not using the pond for anything. It's pretty far away. It's very heavily wooded to get there, so we're trying to keep everything up along the roadway itself.
Okay. That's all I have on somewhere.
Do you have any other questions for the developer? No?
Would we call that length of cul-de-sac when if it were to come back, would that be existing nonconformance then?
Yeah, pretty much. There's nowhere for that cul-de-sac to go, so, you know.
It is what it is.
If there was a way to make it a temporary cul-de-sac and leave it that way for a potential future development beyond, that would be what we would do. But in this case, it stops there. Carroll Drive is, if you go to that area,
Yeah, it's further back.
Carroll Drive is right there. There's homes right there.
You can't, you
I
just
don't
can't
think
make.
I have any issue from a technical perspective. I'm just questioning, if not my expertise, is the legality. I assume it's okay to be accepted.
And let me ask you this question too, with respect to the point of race up here. If he doesn't receive this modification, can he still develop the lots?
Technically, if he doesn't receive the modification, the answer to that would be no, because he would come back with a revised plan and probably have more lots there. So if he doesn't receive this modification, I assume, and he's here tonight, he can speak to this, we'll see a revised plan with more than 6 lots.
On a private driveway, on a private gravel road?
It'll be on a, if he comes back with, if council and planning commission deny the modification, I assume the developer will come back to the township with a plan with more than 6 lots, pave the whole thing, and there'll be more than 6 lots there. I don't know how many lots.
Well, he would pay the whole thing.
In order to develop this without a modification, he'd have to pave the whole thing, but.
Yeah, come on up, sir.
I'm Joe McLaughlin Builders. When we got this piece of property, we did not want to heavily impact that area with 18 to 20 homes that we could fit on it. Our niche as McLaughlin Builders is on larger lots, and this seemed to fit us pretty well because it's in the northern part of the township. We did not want to impact those people on TP by paving the street from the beginning and fitting 18 or 20 lots on there. We combined 2 parcels of Barney and the Carbonera property to get this. And I think we left out something about what we found in the deed. Did we not?
What are you talking about?
That got us to this point?
Yeah,
Well, that's true.
I guess I failed to recognize the backstory.
Can you explain that now?
I will.
Okay.
When Mr. McLaughlin first approached us, we came back to him saying, no, if you want to do this, you're going to have to pave the road, and there's really no way of getting around it. We didn't see these lots in their current format as he could even create new lots back there because it was a private road. Well, he did some nice deed research, all the credit to him, and found a recorded plan from 1903 in page book 2 that has not been superseded, the Edgebrook Estates plan that showed approximately 5 or 6 lots back here. And they were just, tax consolidated over time to resemble a single lot, but in reality, there are multiple lots back there. So in conversations with him, we thought it might be appropriate to grant a modification if they did not exceed the initial number of lots in the Edgebrook Estates plan. So that's why he's coming.
How many lots were designated in that old plan?
I haven't looked at it in a while, but approximately 6. It was 5 or 6 lots.
So it's roughly the same.
Roughly the same as the old Edgebrook Estates plan.
And would that be grandfathered based on that?
I mean, because it was never overridden by any subdivision plan, I mean, it could theoretically. Now, these homes here at the north were carved out of the old Edgebrook Estates plan, but these lots here were never really affected after the Edgebrook Estates plan was recorded. So the lot configuration would not be identical. He could maybe get the same number of lots. That's why we're here with a modification request. So the 6 to 6 is an equitable representation of, in terms of lot number, what the Edgebrook Estates plan might look like today.
So essentially, the old plan lot lines that were laid, they wouldn't conform to what he was proposing now.
Correct,
So
but
they'd be modified lot line
yeah,
changes.
and keeping
So
the same number.
Would that negate the old lots, and now we're starting new, and therefore, that's why we're...
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
That was our township solicitor's
Yeah.
interpretation.
All
That
right.
because he's not keeping those Edgebrook lots exactly like they're laid out in 1902, and he's coming and reconfiguring them, he needs to abide by our subdivision and land development regulations.
But really, the leg of gravel road, that's never going to be put in unless the township puts it in. I mean, in reality, right? Am I incorrect in that sense?
Yeah.
What was the, I didn't hear.
There's a length of gravel road in this proposal that will remain at 20 feet wide, which understood is an improvement from today. But that's never going to be improved by anyone unless the township improves it in the future. I don't see a conglomerate of homeowners coming together and deciding they would like to put in a paved road.
You might be right.
Those are the two scenarios.
Right.
Correct.
Township or all those who front bear some burden in that.
There is, Seth, that large piece of property below where the existing homes are on TP. It's still available. That's not to say someone buys that someday and wants to do something similar to what Joe's doing, and they come in and pave that stretch of road.
But the topography of that lot doesn't seem to be buildable.
It's a little steeper than the
Yeah.
parcel to the north of that,
Right.
but
Not much.
what's that?
It's not much different.
Yeah, it's, I'm not sure. At some point in the future, we would hope that all these private roads eventually become public roads. So I think this is a step in the right direction. It gets part of the road built to township spec. It leaves a stretch still unimproved gravel, but it's an improvement over what's there now.
I'm all like
Townships.
fire trucks or whatnot, can they get back there?
They can get back there, and they'll be able to get back there better and get turned around better.
And we're getting 2 new fire hydrants as part of this plan. They've already actually been installed. That was at the request of the fire department, so we've at least made a little bit of progress in that sense.
So the fire department has seen this and they're okay with
Yep.
this plan.
So the engineering of the road, being a gravel cartway, it'll be built correctly up to the gravel part, it just won't have the asphalt on top or the curbs? Is that, I mean, what's the difference between the gravel roadway to the 20-foot and the
Joe,
difference between that
Young, you wanna
and
speak
the
on that?
final road?
Joe Young, Harshman. So the gravel portion, we're proposing it to be, I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's going to be a certain thickness of aggregate, crushed and compacted up to where it would taper into the paved section. So we would lay it, as you approach it, it would be lower, so you could lay pavement on top of that at some point, but then as you get to the paved section, it would.
Okay, yeah, but what I'm asking is above that, I mean, is that base, is that to township specs if you were building the whole thing? Or would that have to be all dug out and redone if a public road were to come through?
The reality of it is they'd have to go in and cut the slot out and do it as a brand-new road at that point in time.
Like to your
Right, and
your comment, it's not going to happen
It doesn't
with
seem
6
to
private
be
residents.
practical that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because even if you were to build, in my opinion, that road base all but the asphalt, that's going to degrade over time.
Right.
You need to come back in and adjust it.
Redo it anyway.
Yeah, you have to redo some of it. Maybe you don't have to do all of it, but you get segregation and it would be a problem.
Does rain erode the gravel portion of the existing road, or do they have to re-gravel it? And who's responsible for that?
Would you like to speak? Joe, can you replace Joe at the podium, please? Yes, please, and thank you.
State your name. I was getting ready to say we have some audience members, I think, want to comment.
Yeah, I'm Elena Kentros. I live at TP 225. We've been there 30 years, and we're not opposed to Joe McLaughlin's development at all. We're pleased he's only putting in 6 units, 6 beautiful homes, it sounds like. The current owner, Barney's, have lived there forever. She did not want a big housing plan up there, and nor do we. However, widening the gravel road is a bigger burden on us financially for the maintenance. Not to complain. I would love to see it paved, personally, but my neighbors do not agree. You know, they're old timers. They would love to see it the way it's been forever. Hearing what's going on here, I did not realize that the new portion would eventually be township responsibility.
That's not what I said.
Okay, that's no problem.
It'll stay private. It's going to be built to township spec, but the township will not be in there removing snow or doing
It will
anything.
never be dedicated?
At this point in time, the plan is to keep it private. It may at some point in the future, but the plan from the developer now is to keep it private. It's just going to be built to township spec. So,
That's good.
right.
Well, sure, I understand that. And the fire hydrants are wonderful.
What's that?
The fire hydrants,
Right?
excellent.
So,
But I can see going down the road, it could become an issue if it becomes a dedicated road at that end. And I can't imagine people in that price range.
Lynn,
Yes,
the folks, the new 6 owners, will be helping you financially.
Maintain.
They have to maintain not only their paid portion, they need to be participating with you as well
Sure.
as the other lot owners in there.
On the gravel
So
portion.
oh,
their-
sure, I understand.
Their burden.
I misunderstood. That was the original explanation, that everyone would be maintaining.
Those 6 owners have to maintain the paid portion that they're getting from the developer, plus they need to be part of the maintenance agreement with you existing lot owners. You understand that?
Would the existing homeowners also be responsible for paving, for snow removal of the extended paved area?
No.
How can you,
Can you have 2 separate agreements?
you got 2 separate agreements?
I think you can.
Is there an
Well-
HOA?
There won't be an HOA
That'll have to be,
worked out, but
yeah, that's completely separate. I just heard something here I misunderstood. I thought the road was eventually going to be dedicated from the entrance to the new plan. I misunderstood that.
Could it be if it was fully paved from the start?
dedicated?
Yeah.
Yes.
That would include storm drainage as well.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother ballpark. My misunderstanding.
That's really only it, though. I mean, you're talking, I mean, if, Mr. Young, you could speak to this, but if we're looking at 500 feet of additional roadway, it's 12,000 square feet, you're talking maybe 65 grand of asphalt, roughly, plus stormwater. I mean, you're probably, I mean, I'm gonna throw $150,000 or in ballpark about what you would be looking at to make that completely up to township specs, assuming the cost already includes your base up to the sub-base of asphalt.
Sounds reasonable.
So that's what we're talking about.
But in reality, if you think about that concept, the residents never have any more maintenance and they actually have they have snow removal and all the benefits of a public road.
And the property value.
Yep.
But I'm not my neighbors aren't in agreement with that.
Yeah, I understand that.
No, I didn't mean to open a can of worms here. I just thought that the new portion was going to be dedicated. And I just didn't see snow removal coming in and doing a new portion, and we're not, you know. I mean, it's been a challenge for 30 years getting the new gravel up there and having it spread. I mean, private roads are a challenge all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But we weathered through it and been able to deal with it okay. And we're not opposed to this at all, and the gravel road is not an issue going forward. I would like a paved road in front of our place, and I had even suggested to Joe possibly going in and paving, you know, contributing to it being paved in front of our home when he does it, if that's even possible. I don't know. But drainage is an issue, and our property already has a drainage issue because we've graveled so many times in front of our home. The road actually is a little bit high to where our property is, our lawn. So,
It might get worse with more traffic.
and that's another issue too. And widening the road is an issue with our property, even with the right-of-ways, which I've talked to Ed about. I don't know what their plan is, which way they're going to go. We have a sprinkler system on our yard, and apparently it's in the right-of-way.
Your sister? What did I hear you just say?
Sprinkler
Sprinkler
system.
Oh, okay.
The gas company was up to fix the line and broke the system when they were digging, which is how we learned that it must have been in the right of way. So it's another issue. There's a lot of things to consider there. So we can all work it out. It can all be worked out, but these are minor in the overall
We'll
picture.
get to those finer details. The thing that we're dealing with tonight is the bigger picture. Is
Of the road.
Planning Commission and council comfortable with that 500-foot of road staying
Gravel.
gravel?
So on the positive side, I want to tell you that he had because we're not against this at all, and we want to work with him 100%. He had a prospective buyer up there, and they stopped to talk to us how we liked living up there all those years. And of course, there's a little piece of heaven up there. And they live currently over by Simmons Farm, the old farm. And we said, we love it up there, you know, blah, 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 blah. And he said, what about the gravel road? I said, we've never had a problem at all. I said, what do you think about that? He said, we love it. It seems more like country. And I think it was you, said something about, it's cheesy. You know, if you're buying $1 million home up here, why would you want to access it by a gravel road? But that's exactly what the buyer said. It seems more like the country coming up here on a gravel road. So that's another way of looking at it. Just for your son.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any other statements?
I do. I think she touched upon something that was really important. I think we heard the comment, why would someone want to live on a gravel road? We have a good number of prospective clients there. And Ed will tell you, I wanted to keep the road gravel. And they did too. So my druthers would be not to, but Ed wants it paved, staff wants it paved. I see the benefit. I also see the benefit for the other people on TP because now the lady at the end can't even get her garbage removed. Because now the garbage truck can go all the way to the end and turn around. Making it public, then the existing homeowners are going to have people driving up past their house and turning around and actually making more traffic than they've had for 30 years. If it remains private, there's somewhat of a control over who comes up and back. And that's why we're trying not to change the character of that area too much.
Any other audience comments?
The justification for this modification is purely financial, is what I'm hearing.
No.
Maybe I misread that correctly. Incorrectly.
I think it's more than that. You just heard from one of the residents here that, you know, they love that character. This is a plan that's trying to maintain that character. It's not all financial.
We're creating a precedent here. We're already having gravel go in the paved roads.
We're creating a good precedent. We're creating a 800-foot gravel public road. We're making a gravel private road. We're making 300 feet of that road paved, and with a cul-de-sac that actually works for services to get in and out. And we're not creating a bad precedent. We're making this portion of TP Road more closer to being able to be dedicated to Peters for ultimate ownership and maintenance like we do on any other road.
Yeah. And I want to make one comment on the recommendations. Your private road maintenance agreement, it indicates that it'll be made with the owners of the 6 lots for the private portion of TP. But you indicated earlier that they would also be responsible for maintenance of.
Go ahead.
Maintenance of the if it stays gravel as well, and I'd like that to be added to make sure that that is included as part of whatever we make a motion on.
Just to make it clear, these people can attest to, before we got started here, we had a meeting with we invited everybody that owns property on TP. I think there were 2 people maybe that did show up, the lady at the end and the Hesses that own that larger piece. And the point of our meeting was to see if they wanted to participate in a maintenance agreement on the whole road from start to finish. Now, I can't twist anybody's arm, but I tried. And I left it with them that they could talk among themselves, and if they wanted to incorporate their properties in with our properties in that maintenance agreement, then that would clear up any maintenance on TP private lane to begin with. And I'm not quite sure if they ever got back to each other or if anybody wants to do it. I see pros and cons for both of them, but we did approach them with that opportunity.
But what, and we can clarify this in this maintenance agreement that we're seeking as part of this recommendation to you is they need to, their maintenance agreement that they're creating needs to include from Moccasin all the way to the end of the cul-de-sac.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was meaning. It says
We
paved the portion. I think it needs to include, if left unpaved, any portion of TP from the intersection of Moccasin to the end of the paved.
Let me just read this. A private road maintenance agreement be created and recorded between the 6 lots created in the Tomahawk plan lots for the private.
For the entirety of TP Road, from the intersection of Moccasin Drive, including the current gravel and widened gravel roadway, to the end of the paved section as part of the Tomahawk plan of lots.
Perfect. I think so, because I think those folks are going to benefit from that road, from that access, no matter
Absolutely.
what. So no matter what it is.
Those 6 owners need to help maintain the gravel as well.
Seth, can you go back to the aerial there? So show me again where the paved portion stops.
Approximately right here.
So that goes past the Kentros's property. So
That's where it starts.
Starts
Oh,
and
it
goes this way.
starts.
Sorry, I was just
Starts.
thinking the opposite directions of you. It's going to end with the cul-de-sac about right here.
the paved.
Correct. So this will be your paved strip right here.
So the paved strip is only where the new lots, new construction will be. The unpaved
Is
gravel
here south,
will remain like it is today.
widened.
Oh, so it's-
Slightly improved.
Yes.
Little, yeah, okay,
That's the request.
okay.
That's the gist of the request tonight.
And I apologize.
Now it's much different.
Yeah, because I was backwards. I thought they were
Yeah, I
going
thought
to
it was
pave up
too.
and then leave the remainder gravel to that back house,
No,
but it's the opposite.
it's the opposite.
Okay.
The entrance, you come through gravel, 500 feet, then you hit the paving to the cul-de-sac.
The existing gravel portion of the roadway, is there a right-of-way in there of 50 feet?
40.
40.
40 feet. And from a township perspective and staff, the intent of requesting the pavement along the new portion of road, we'll call it, to be incorporated with the 6 lots. The rationale, may I ask in particular, that was that from a fire and safety standpoint, to provide access to the cul-de-sac for the home in the rear, for
All of it.
garbage pickup, et
Garbage
cetera?
pickup.
All
yeah.
of it.
All of it. That couldn't happen on a widened gravel? I'm just making sure I understand.
It could, but we prefer that it be paved. It's easier to
Wow. Traverse.
plow and be accessible in case of emergency. It's easier to remove snow from paved roadway as opposed to gravel.
And that's not necessarily the township's act at this point. We're not going to be plowing it. This is up to the private homeowners who have expressed that they want it to be gravel, the
Yes.
folks who've showed up, the builder who says it's more marketable gravel. Now, I do understand at the end, we need to make sure that it's, well, all of it is approved by fire, approved by waste, et cetera. I just get very confused where we have gravel, we go pavement, gravel, pavement. It just seems like there's something missing there.
Well, yeah, in this case, you're going to go from pavement to gravel to pavement.
And the new pavement will not be maintained by the township.
Correct.
Correct.
It's not conveyed to the township.
Correct. But again, in the future, it's going to be ready to be accepted by the township. It's going to be in a 50-foot wide right-of-way and paved and built to all township specs.
Yeah.
That cul-de-sac will be a standard-sized 80-foot diameter cul-de-sac to facilitate servicing that portion of teepee.
I guess who's ever going to ask the township to do this? Those 6 residents are going to sort of maybe get upset, hey, this gravel's not working out that great. Are they going to come back to the township and say, we're going to pay the rest?
You're talking up to the new development?
Yeah,
Jeff?
that little piece.
Jeff, I don't...
Well, explain to me who's going to say to you, we're going to pay the rest of this, take it over. Who's going to actually do that?
At this
Is it
point in
gonna
time,
be a
I
majority
cannot
of
answer that, but
homeowners?
maybe. But there's a big...
The
Look at that big...
The likelihood of somebody developing the 3 acres on the left after we do ours is pretty likely. And they would be the ones to bear the burden.
The big property, Seth, if you can point it out, please, that is a similar property to what Joe's buying. Who's not going to say that 2 months down the road, another Joe McLaughlin comes by and wants to do 3 lots there and paves that stretch for everybody?
That's what's going to happen, right?
And then at that point,
Let's think about that.
What's that?
Can he do that with just the gravel strip? The next development?
No,
You have to dig
he
it
would
out.
be in the same
You'd be in the same situation.
Joe,
Okay.
the
And
Tom.
we're also bringing him sewer that's going to make his property more valuable.
So if you were building if you bought those extra acres, you would just be paving it, right?
I tried.
Okay. But if you completed that, got an agreement, there would not be a thought in your mind to pay.
Well, it wouldn't be a thought because Ed would force me to do it.
Okay.
No, the township would.
Except with a back money.
That's right.
So as far as planning staff and our recommendation, we've kicked it around, not just here in planning, but engineering and township management. We think we're gaining. We think
Benefit.
this is it's going to be an improvement to the area without changing the character a lot, basically.
But 2 months down the road, the character's changed. If somebody comes in and buys it,
That piece,
Yeah.
that's true.
We're getting right now, the township is getting a piece of the puzzle. It's the last piece.
Right.
But there may be infill pieces if this.
Correct. Yeah, it's like putting together a puzzle.
Yep.
so our approval tonight will then...
Recommendation.
The recommendation will then kick it over to council.
Correct.
And they'll have the final approval.
correct.
Any other audience comments or development comments?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that the Peters Township Planning Commission recommend approval for the Tomahawk Plan of Lots modification, subject to the two conditions outlined in planning staff's recommendation memo, with the change that I'm going to request Mr. Kuntz read.
Number 1 will now read, a private road maintenance agreement will be created and recorded between the 6 lots created in the Tomahawk Plan of Lots for the entirety of TP Road, including the widened gravel portion and the newly paved portion from the intersection with Moccasin north to the end of the paved section. This shall be made a note on the final plan for recording.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, let me just interrupt because I think you're potentially creating a financial burden on the existing lot owners. I mean, would they be responsible for potential snow removal up on top? Or what are we talking about maintenance?
I think it's a new agreement for just the new owners of the 6 lots.
Correct.
Okay.
Basically,
That's clear that you don't create a new burden on these people.
basically saying those 6 homeowners have sole responsibility for the paved portion, but also have a shared responsibility with the existing homeowners for the gravel in the front.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Hey, just a quick announcement. This is just step 1. This has a lot of approvals to go through. No, that,
You got ways to go.
but I'm just saying, there's more meetings to come. And we'll work out the details with you as we go.
I know.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. Thanks for coming.
Before we start,
Gotcha.
You want me to wait until you get in?
Yeah, let's-
The next one? Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, Lana.
Thank you. We'll be out.
Turn into the report.
Yeah.
Bring him in
It's
here.
got like, it's my pistol. There you go.
This is Judge Judy.
Except that would have to be a bailiff. Yes.
Let's hope we don't need his
These
assistance.
last,
Now, these all
these last,
Robinsons.
Yeah, all three of the route.
Agenda, there's like 20 people with Tom. He has an entourage.
Oh, yeah?
He brings his whole crew. Tries to intimidate us.
So we're going to handle them each separately. Each division.
Are they coming? Get comfortable, Tom.
All right, the next item of new business, the Planning Commission recommendation of Arlecchino Subdivision Plan Number 1, final plan, Camp Lane.
So these next two items go hand in hand. They both have to deal with the Arlecchino restaurant and surrounding property at 133 Camp Lane. This first application is for a subdivision plan, kind of consolidating a number of parcels that are owned by the Robinson Family Limited Partnership around Arlecchino, and then doing a property swap with the property to the north, the de Blasio property. This subdivision plan, as shown on the screen again, consolidates these properties here as part of the next item on the agenda with a proposed building expansion for Arlecchino, kind of creating and facilitating the appropriate area for this building expansion. And in order to do that, they're doing a nice little land swap here with the de Blasio property. So this is actually a sheet from the land development application, but they do a nice job of highlighting the portions in red here that will be coming over from the de Blasio property onto the Arlecchino property, the Robinson property, and the green portions here will be swapped over to the de Blasio property. In total, this will create go from, was it 5 separate lots down to 2 lots, all of which conform to the regulations of the zoning ordinance. Staff is making a recommendation that the Arlecchino subdivision plan number 1 be approved subject to the 2 conditions outlined in my report. The first is simply just a minor note that their medium density residential table on the cover sheet just lists that there's no minimum lot size for single standoff units in that district. This is property zoned MD. If they were to come in and anybody would to do like a major development, you need at least 5 acres, but because it's a minimum, just a single house, there's no minimum lot size. And then they have to address some comments from the Peters Township Sanitary Authority. I can answer any questions you have about the subdivision plan in particular. We'll get into the land development plan as the next item on the agenda.
Anybody here from the developer here?
Do you want your presentation now, Mike, or do you want me to wait and do
Might
this?
as well,
Okay,
yes.
give me just a second. I haven't had a chance to open it quite yet.
Good evening, Mike Wetzel from Victor Wetzel Associates. We have Tom Robinson, Chris Bastianellis, Chris Ham, Joe Estes here tonight for our presentation. In regard to the subdivision, in regard to the Seth's comments, it's relatively simple as what he had mentioned in regard to consolidating the existing lots from the Robinson Family Trust for the 5 properties there to the de Blasio property to the north through there. If you want, I can go through the whole presentation of both the subdivision and land development so you can see why we're doing that. But if you'd like to just talk about the subdivision now, we can do that at this point. But we do have a PowerPoint to kind of go through the
I'd rather get through the subdivision, do our recommendation, and then do the land development after that.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
it's
Let's
up
do
to
the
you
one.
to subdivision first.
Yeah, let's split them up so we stay nice
So
and
we're
clean.
not- So when our recommendations don't go through.
Exactly.
we're not-
We don't want them to bleed over.
So the subdivision is just a simple
Just a-
reshift.
Yeah.
Very
Any
simple.
Any audience comments on the subdivision? Any commissioner comments?
I'll make a motion to recommend the Arlequina subdivision plan number 1. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item of new business is the planning commission approval Arlequino Restaurante, 133 Camp Lane.
Mike, I'll keep this short because I know you have a wonderful presentation prepared for everyone. In conjunction with the subdivision plan that you just saw, the Arlequino Restaurante is proposing a building and parking expansion on what would be the consolidated parcel as part of the subdivision plan. The building expansion itself would be a 1,540 square foot addition, shown there in orange on the screen. And then they're also proposing a number of parking spaces throughout the site, but a majority of which would be located on a new parking lot off to the west of the site here, with some additional parking spaces proposed in the front, right off the entrance from Camp Lane. Over here is a little rendering of the proposed building from the front and then from the side. They're going to be using either some siding or some brick materials here on the front with a nice patio and chimney, a kind of a new dining area and kitchen area for the restaurant itself. In regard to stormwater management for this plan, they're proposing to do an underground stormwater management tank in the proposed parking lot that would capture runoff from both the building expansion and the new paved areas throughout the site. In addition to stormwater management, they're also proposing some landscaping throughout the site, here there at the entrance, around the new building expansion, around the new parking lot, and then a little landscape screen off to the north on the de Blasio property, just to provide a little bit of a buffer between the new development and the existing house. Staff is recommending approval. This is a approval, not a recommendation of the Planning Commission. Planning Commission, because its site plan is an approval. Staff's recommending approval of the Arlequino Restaurante building and parking expansion per the 7 conditions listed in my staff report. I'm here to answer any questions, but the applicant has a presentation that they would like to go through.
Yeah, please come over back.
I will-
Okay, am I able to run? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just want to make sure everything's, I got 2 presentations going at once. Here, I don't know if it's working, so I'll just tell me when you need to flip through and I'll flip through. You should have a laser pointer.
Once again, Mike Wetzel with Victor Wetzel Associates. On the screen here, as mentioned, we're here for the building and parking lot expansion for Arlequino with Camp Lane located right along the bottom of the screen. As we already kind of talked about, the consolidation of several of the lots for the Robinson Family Partnership and the Blasio section. Just in relationship, if you recall, this is the view from Camp Lane, kind of an existing bridge right along through here, a small little drainage way that occurs here. Parking that takes place, really this is 100% valet parking. You're not going to be coming here to park yourself. So all the parking is going to be continued as it is today, valet parking. So you do come to the very front, be able to access the building. Valets then park whether along through here or over this side, and off to the left is where we're showing where the parking expansion will be. So once again, no actual self-park in regard to the plan. And as we mentioned, the expansion in regard to the plan, this is just the subdivision we've already talked about. So I've lost my, I'll use this one. We're looking at the building expansion right along through here. This is the existing building you saw from the photo. The expansion is 1,540 square feet. And really, you can kind of see this outline right through here. That was the location of where the existing patio was today. So it's just making that space larger in regard to that location, and then where there was some ADA parking located through here. They've then added an outdoor patio section through here, then ADA ramp up to the door in itself. So what we're keeping is the existing paving and parking that takes place in through here. The Belazios, as they access the site today, will still maintain, be able to come back, use their driveway back to their home and through this section. We'll be doing then some grading along and through this area to be able to build the overall parking lot expansion. And you can see, as Seth mentioned, the stormwater detention facility. Lot number, in regard to more of the detail, this is looking at the detail plan a little bit closer in regard to expansion. Once again, ADA, a small little wall and railing through here. This existing house will remain, and then the location of the stormwater management facilities, and then the grading that would take place. In regard to landscaping, once again, similar to what Seth showed, we'll be providing screen planting here because this elevation is higher than the road. We did do a hedgerow planting, so when cars are parked in through here, they're not shooting all the way down to Camp Lane. So we add that street parking requirements in regard to street tree planting along through here, as well as access for planting along the front of the building itself. So adding some additional landscaping, keeping existing trees along the property line and through here, as well as the existing buffer that takes place with Brush Creek over and through this section. Architectural plans is once again just the existing building footprint, and this is where the addition will take place, the patio and the ADA ramps. On the upper floor area of the building, we'll have access out the back through steps and a mechanical area. There'll be no area for public access. They'll be strictly mechanical. And as was shown here, the elevations. This is the front of the elevation as you look through the railing. Nice little fireplace, the door from the patio through this section. The side area along through there with the grade and with the existing grade that takes place there, it makes it very nice to begin the access to the mezzanine level. And that's the rear elevation that takes place and through here. So we're really kind of working off of the existing architecture of the old schoolhouse building that's there today. So once again, as we're looking at the neighborhood site plan, really fits within the community. Camp Lane really wraps itself around back in the Washington Road. You can see how we're working the addition and the parking within the overall site. And I think it's a good solution to some of their parking issues that they have today. They're doing so well that it becomes a little bit difficult to park if you've been out there. The additional parking spaces will very much help in regard to the business throughout the site.
So still be all valet anyway?
100% valet parking.
To that point, Mike, I spoke with the property owner at the western end of Camp Lane earlier this week, and she was actually expressing some excitement with the additional parking because she has experienced some of the issues that you're referring, where she's had parking and it's been difficult to sometimes get to her house. So at least one person outside of this project is excited about additional parking on site, so it's no longer an issue on Camp Lane.
Yeah, it's a difficult site if you've been there with some of the slopes and just with the existing parking lot, but I think it's become a very good situation in regard to the layout of the parking lot and the use of, still continuing the use of valet parking in the site.
Absent of the valet, we still have adequate parking.
Oh yes, we exceed the required parking that's still that's needed.
Understood.
So, and lastly, just once again, the landscape plan in regard to the improvements for the Arlecchino expansion and parking lot. Glad to answer any questions that the board might have at this time.
The retaining wall with the ADA spaces, is that, I think it's under 6 feet?
It's under 5 feet.
Is the outdoor dining at a larger percentage now that it exists?
I'm not sure if it's large. You can kind of see the outline of where the patio is today. I would say it's close to the same size.
I'm just thinking about COVID issues.
Yes. So hopefully when this is done, we're all not wearing masks tonight. We hope.
What's the exterior, can you go to the architect, what's the exterior materials and color scheme?
I don't have the color schemes associated with it, but we have a siding or stucco, once again with the building, a stone chimney. What we really want to be able to do is just kind of enhance the addition to the existing more brick building that's taking place over here, and really kind of more of a decorative railing that takes place in the front to address the front portion of the site.
It's not a historic building, is it?
What's that?
Schoolhouse is not.
Any comments on the gateway letter that are significant or we need to talk about here? It just notes that the gateway letter is outstanding, or comments be addressed, but they're all standard housekeeping.
Housekeeping kind of things.
Any audience comments? Anybody not with the developer want to come speak?
I just want to say it's a tremendous upgrade. It's going to be a great addition to the township.
Good, thank you very much.
With that, I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the Arlecchino Ristorante building and parking lot expansion in accordance with those 7 conditions outlined in planning staff's memo of August 6th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item of new business is the Planning Commission recommendation to the zoning hearing board case 992-2020 Robinson LP floodplain variances at 350 Valley Brook Road.
Before you tonight is a potential recommendation to the Township Zoning Hearing Board for a case that will be going before them on Tuesday night, August the 18th, in regard to a proposal by the Robinson Family Limited Partnership at 350 Valley Brook Road. It's this property, the majority of this property here, which you can see kind of some of the issues we're going to get in later this evening. The application tonight is adjacent to the previously approved Valley Brook Cafe site plan that was before Planning Commission and Zoning Hearing Board last year. But tonight we're looking at a new land development, a proposed medical office at this existing property here off to the east, or I guess kind of the northeast. For 3 variances in particular. The first being fill being placed into a floodplain as part of a land development activity. The second being a building in the floodplain as part of a land development activity. And the third being a land use for medical office, kind of coinciding with the building itself, also being located within the floodplain in accordance with the floodplain control section of the Township zoning ordinance, which requires variance for those 3 items. Planning Commission, in your packets, you would have gotten an older site plan than what we're going to have for you tonight. We've gone through a number of renditions with the applicant on various size buildings and impacts into the floodplain. What Planning Commission previously has seen or was delivered to you in your packets was for a 12,900 square foot building with approximately a 950 square foot extension of the building into the floodplain, and then the associated fill into the floodplain with the required parking for that size of a structure. In conjunction with staff's concerns about the size of that building being within the floodplain, staff also expressed in the Township traffic engineer concerns about that size building ultimately requiring a left-hand turn lane on Valley Brook Road and potential issues requiring an HOP or the costs associated with installing a left-hand turn lane, which the applicant has expressed that he has no real interest in putting in a turn lane. So in some conversations with the applicant, staff has gotten them to come back to us with a revised site plan as shown on the screen here for a 9,200 square foot building, which puts them right at the threshold for not requiring a left-hand turn lane off Valley Brook Road, which concurrently also reduces all 3 of their variance requests. They still would request all 3 of them, but we're going from a 950 square foot expansion into the floodplain for the building down to approximately 260 square feet. And because the building is being reduced, the number of required parking spaces is also reduced. So they won't have as many parking spaces in the floodplain, ergo will not have as much fill located into the floodplain itself. So after these rounds of negotiations with the applicant, staff had previously said in our staff report that we were only going to be recommending one of the 3 variances for the fill because we weren't comfortable with the building size. But now that we've come to a better place in terms of the size of the building, staff will be providing a recommendation to the zoning hearing board on Tuesday night that they approve all 3 of the variances. The Township Council also looked at this application Monday night, but they as well did not see the revised site plan, and they supported staff's claim for the one of the 3 variances. But, we can't speak for council, but we think that they would be comfortable with all 3 of the variances if they saw the revised site plan with the smaller building size and the smaller impact into the floodplain itself. But staff is making a recommendation to the zoning hearing board that the 3 variances be approved, subject to these 9 conditions, and I'm going to read them out loud if you'll give me the opportunity. First, confirmation from Gateway Engineers that the 100-year base flood analysis completed by the applicant and the applicant's engineer complies with all township regulations regarding the permitted increase in the 100-year floodplain. Basically, that portion of the ordinance says that on their property, they're allowed a 1-foot increase in the 100-year floodplain, but no increase on any surrounding properties. The applicant has been working with Gateway Engineers on an initial report and then a revised report. They've been going back and forth. We got a new submittal late this afternoon that we're going to have Gateway take a look at, but the applicant seems to think that they have addressed all of Gateway's concerns. Ultimately, they will have to come back to Planning Commission for site plan approval, so you could potentially be seeing this again if the zoning hearing board approves the variances. Building permit approval would be the long-term final approval for this site plan. The variance would expire if the applicant fails to apply for all of their necessary permits, typically mostly building permit, within 1 year of their decision from the zoning hearing board. So during that time frame, they'd have to come back to Planning Commission for site plan approval, get the site plan addressed, and then ultimately apply for a building permit. And if they do not begin the permitted activity within 6 months of receiving said permit. So they would have to begin their building activity within 6 months of receiving their building permit. The lowest floor, including the basement of the structure, be at least 1.5 feet above the 100-year flood elevation, or it could be flood-proof because it would be a non-residential structure. Any such structure thereof being built below the regulatory flood elevation shall be designed and constructed in accordance with the standards for completely dry flood-proofing contained in the publication Floodproofing Regulations, United States Army Corps of Engineers, June 1972, as amended June 1992, or something equivalent. Again, straight from our floodplain control section of the Township zoning ordinance. These variances, as described in our floodplain control section, may increase premium rates for flood insurance, and so we just want to make that known as a condition of the variance, that be well known to the applicant themselves. There is a separate section of the floodplain controls in regard to building design and construction, subsection 1112, that they would also need to be in compliance with. And lastly, a note from the Township engineer, in accordance with 440-116E, the applicant shall provide the Township with a completed floodplain certificate documenting the as-built floor elevations for the building. Those are our 9 conditions that we will be bringing to the Township Zoning Hearing Board on Tuesday night as part of a recommendation for approval. I'm here to answer any questions you might have. We also have the applicant and the applicant's engineer here as well.
Seth, 2 questions. You mentioned the 3rd variance. Could you repeat what that was? There was
the land use. So
land use.
One of the floodplain control section of the Township zoning ordinance enumerates specific permitted uses in a floodplain outside of a building being permitted in a floodplain. Medical office is not inherently a permitted use inside of a floodplain per se. So in conjunction with the building being in the floodplain, there would have to also get a variance for that land use. It's a
and the reason for that is?
It's in the floodplain.
Well, the reason for that is because it's a medical office building. Those people may not be completely able-bodied to exit the building through.
And that is it's a permitted use in that district,
right?
Just not in the floodplain.
And my second question was, you mentioned that council approved either one of 3 or all.
So the same recommendation in your report went to council on Monday night, and they recommended to the zoning hearing board that one of the 3 variances be approved, the one being the fill located in the floodplain. However, that was based off an old site plan which showed the 12,900 square foot building that would cause a turn lane, and staff felt that was too big for the site. Ergo, the increase, and the impact on the floodplain was increased. So now that we've gotten down to a building that we're comfortable with in terms of site design, size, no turn lane required, we're comfortable with that 250 square foot in the floodplain. So
But
council.
the turn lane's not in front of us this evening. We're just talking about the 3 variances for the floodplain.
Correct.
Got it. Engineer for the applicant.
Please come up to the microphone area to start the presentation first.
Oh, sorry.
Give me a second, Mike.
Good evening, once again, Mike Wetzel with Victor Wetzel Associates. We also have Chris Ham, who did the engineering study in regard to the floodplain. And what we have here is the Valley Brook Medical Office Building by the Thomas A. Robinson Family Limited Partnership. We're here tonight for the variance request, as Seth had mentioned, in regard to the plan. Really, the outline, I think you maybe want one.
Yeah, it skipped one on me. There we go.
There we go. As Seth mentioned, we have 3 requests in front of you. This is part 11 of the floodplain controls. First modification is section 440-1110, permitted land uses. Really what under that section, we'll show you that in the next slide. This section doesn't allow for any building, any development or structures in the floodplain. It doesn't matter whether it's a medical office building, it could be a building for a putting range out there. Your ordinances are a little bit different in regard to floodplain, that you have 2 sections associated with the ordinance that aren't normally found in other municipalities' floodplain ordinances, which is why we're coming in front of you here tonight for the variances. The second one is section 44111, prohibited land uses. Item A, new structures within any identified floodplain. You're allowed to have that permitted with a variance. And then item B, filling of the floodplains. Once again, permitted with a variance. Any application for the variance, as mentioned below here, allow new construction within the floodplain is requested, but the provisions of section 440-1116 for variances must be satisfied. So when we do look at your ordinance for the floodplain, this is the section 1110, permitted land uses, that outlines all the uses. You can see through the permitted land uses that there is not one building structure that's permitted under the Peters Township ordinances. This is one section you really don't find in most other floodplain ordinances, but wildlife sanctuary, game farm, forestry, harvesting of crops, outdoor plant nursery, pasture or grazing. G is interesting with recreation use. You can do a park, a day camp, picnic grove, golf course, hunting, fishing, etc., but no structures are permitted. Also, no fillings permitted. So if you have a large site and you have floodplains, you can't necessarily grade within that section. Once again, you can do treatment plants, utility transmission lines. You can do paved parking lots. That is a permitted use, but you can't grade for a paved parking lot. So that's where some of the conflict of your ordinance takes place. And then accessory structures. So once again, this section does not allow for any building, whether it's a medical office building, a dessert cafe shop, or a shelter for a park. You would need to come in and ask for this variance. So that's the first variance. Second one is the section 1111, prohibited land uses. So here's our A. Within the identified floodway area, any new structures or substantial improvements shall be prohibited. So really, it's basically saying you can't do any improvements within the floodplain. FEMA does allow, Washington County Conservation District, as well as the DEP, allows you to do development within the floodplain. You just need to follow their regulations.
What about banks? Are they going to finance this?
Oh, yes.
They'll
Yeah, This
finance
is
up to the
typical.
floodplain?
This is typical. So in a normal municipality like this, you need to have your building elevation 1.5 feet above the FEMA floodplain
Yeah,
elevation.
yeah.
As long as you're meeting those requirements, as well as a list of other requirements.
So this building will be outside of the floodplain?
Well, with the grading that will take place to raise it up, it will be outside of the
Okay.
floodplain.
But if you didn't do the grading, it would be in the
Correct. Correct.
And then the bank would not have a hard time finding it.
Yes. So that's why you have to follow all the requirements. No matter what, you need to go through the DEP, the Washington County Conservation District, as well as Peters Township Council in regard to site plan approval. But as it says here, if an application for variance to allow new construction or substantial improvements in the identified floodplain are made, you must meet the provisions of 440-1116, which we provided that compliance to. The second variance is really filling of the floodplains where removal possible. So just because we're doing grading within there, and once again, parking lots are allowed, you just can't fill it to grade that parking lot. So that's why we have the 3 variances in front of you here tonight. So when we look at the overall neighborhood, we have Valley Brook Road right along and through here. We have the approved dessert shop that occurs through here. This is our 6.7 acre parcel right through here, and where the medical office building will be. This was lot 1 that was donated to the township with the approval of the dessert shop through here. And you kind of see the character of the neighborhood with the road, and as Brush Run works its way through the area, we also have then the Arrowhead Trail associated with that. And just real quickly in regard to the neighborhood, you know that we have a lot of kind of office type uses. United Refractories, NSS Light, Georgia's Tax Service, another miscellaneous office and through here with the site. We also have the Brookwood Residential Development and their development of singles and duplexes right along the creek through this section.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah. And as you work your way up, once again, Dance Academy, bank, auto repair, the continuation of the residential development, the assisted living facility that's under construction right along through here, the veterinary and VFW. You can just see its relationship and the type of character that we have along Valley Brook Road, and how a medical office building would really kind of add to the existing character of the overall neighborhood. Just some site photos. This is kind of looking at the site where the dessert shop is located, looking up Valley Brook Road. You can kind of see the overhead existing utility line through here. Brush Creek is off to the right. This lower slide is looking closer to Brush Creek. This is where the existing sanitary lines are. They just did some improvements, looking up the NSS Life and then Valley Brook Road through here. Once again, the bottom, the existing sanitary lines that occur here, looking up the Valley Brook Road, and more kind of the features of the grass area that takes place through this section. This is the bank of Valley Brook Road, existing utility lines in through here, and then looking back to where the cafe would be further way back into this section. Kind of view down to the site from NS Life through here. And then once again, Valley Brook Road, looking down at the character. So this kind of gives you the character of the site that we have here right now. So when we do look at the existing site, once again, the site kind of runs, has an irregular shape through here, and then the red property line through this area. The site is once again 6.77 acres in the Valley Brook Corridor District, where medical office buildings are permitted use. In regard to looking at the site, the Brush Creek that occurs in through here. The hatch line through here is the floodway. The red dash line through here and over along and through here is all part of the floodplain. We have the sanitary sewer has a dual sanitary line that runs through the length of the overall site. Existing electric line that you saw in the photos, and then runs down the road area. And then as part of the requirement, there is a 25-foot front yard setback. And we do have 2 storm lines that cross through the site along through this section of the overall area. Once again, the approved site plan for the dessert shop and its access right along and through here. So when you look at all the constraints that we have in regard to floodplain, floodway, existing utilities, really what's left in regard to the development section of the site is this yellow hatched area, yellow fill area into here. Because once again, no development can occur in this portion of the site because of the floodplain under the current Peters Township floodplain ordinance. So that really leaves out of the 6.77 acre site about 0.65 acres of developable land that occurs, or only 9% of the overall site. So we've kind of shown you, we have a lot of existing conditions on the site which are not self-created by the developer, but kind of leaves you really in a theory, if you, under the normal world, you would also have this area as a developable piece too, that's located in the floodplain. So we know that this was really the only area we could develop, just because we don't want to cross the street. This will all be left in its natural condition through here, as well as along the frontage of Valley Brook Road in this portion of the site. So this is really what we have left in regard to the buildable site. So as we look at the overall site plan, once again, access into the site from the dessert shop, we'll have a parking lot along to here. What will end up happening is you'll be able to come in, have a parking interior here. We'll have a drop-off area in front of the building, ADA parking, and then the building itself. It's a proposed medical office building of 9,200 square feet. And that area we'll go into detail. It's just the impact of 250 square feet at that location through here. Once again, you have the floodplain, parking lot, and then the floodway through this portion of the site. If we look at that same kind of detail, you can kind of see where we do have the sanitary lines respecting that, as well as the easements associated with that. And we're really kind of working within that envelope that takes place through here. Now, let's just say this whole building was not, that only 250 square feet area of the building was not in the floodplain. We wouldn't be in front of you tonight for a building variance because that building would be permitted. We're only asking for that portion of the building right there to be located in the floodplain. So that's why we're asking for the variance just for that 250 square foot floodplain impact for the building. And then because of the filling operations that take place in through here for the parking lot, that's why we need to ask for the other two variances as well. So as once again, we look at the drawing, the green area represents our total impact in the floodplain of 18,200 square feet of area associated with that, with very little of it being the building, but most of it being the grading for the parking lot associated within the plan. As part of the requirement, we've submitted detailed engineering studies that Chris Ham has completed. We've gone through countless numbers of reviews with Gateway in regard to providing the engineering detail and the HEC-RAS studies that take place. And that's all been provided. We've provided an updated report to the township as well as the Gateway here today, which conforms to all the requirements for the floodplain regulations. Any questions on that, Chris Ham would be glad to answer those sections. So you can kind of see our floodplain area. So once again, as we're looking at the plan, we have the requested variances. This is our proposed site plan in regard to the area where we are impacting that particular area of the floodplain. No impacts at all to the floodway whatsoever in regard to the plan. The original plan did show grading all the way up to the floodway. We have a small wall that takes place here similar to what's there today, and that's been removed in regard to the development.
I think we have some questions.
Mike, what type of, unless you're going to get into it, what type of medical office building? I mean, are we talking dentists, surgeons? What are we talking?
Tom, we don't have any idea yet, which is following a step before we get to that point so we can do it.
As part of the requirement of the variance in the floodplain, there is a requirement to provide a response to section 440, that should be 1116. These were really all of our responses associated with that. Don't need to necessarily get into all those, but we've shown how we comply to all of those requirements in regard to the plan, which has also been reviewed by Gateway. Once again, those are typical questions that you also see that goes in front of the DEP and Washington County Conservation District to be able to address and get permitting for all of these questions as well. So we've been able to supply those responses. And once again, our hardship and justifications for the variances, as we say under this section, applications for variance to allow new construction is identified in the floodplain area is made. We must meet provisions of 1116, which we just showed our responses. The variance must be met that way. So we applied those responses. The intent of the Valley Brook mixed-use corridors provide a wide range of commercial establishments that are oriented towards businesses and accommodating a variety of building types and sizes for the commercial activity. General commercial areas serve the needs of the area residential neighborhoods. So as regard to the hardship and justification, as we said, the existing drainage way, floodway, the existing floodway limits the parking and building potential used on this parcel. The existing Brush Creek floodway, the floodplain, sanitary lines limit the buildable area of the site to approximately 0.65 acres of the 6.77 acre overall site, which is 9% of the overall site area. As stated above, FEMA, Washington County Conservation District, DEP, allows for both buildings and grading to occur in floodplains with the required permit and local government approvals. Peters Township limits floodplain developments to a variance request really first, and then the local approvals, which is why we're in front of you here today. The proposed variance will not alter the essential character of the existing neighborhood or district. The medical office buildings are permitted use in this district. There are several existing office buildings adjacent to this site along Valley Brook Road. And really, this variance request represents the least modification possible for the development of this parcel. So once again, we're seeking the variance request of the 3 items here tonight in regard to the proposed site plan for Valley Brook Medical. Glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
Maybe the engineer's better for this. So Valley Brook clearly has flooded all the time. We get flooding just closer to this intersection here.
Yes.
Is the engineering you're going to do actually, right now it just goes into a grassy area, infiltration, right? So are you going to make this so there's less runoff along the state area?
Well, we'll have our stormwater management associated within the plan.
Where will all that run into?
What we'll end up running into is, once again, if you recall, we have some existing drainage way that takes place through the site and through here and over along and through here. We'll be providing underground detention up along this area within the parking lot, and then what we'll be doing is providing then storm drainage along down the creek through here, and where they currently exist today.
Okay.
Full stormwater management report will be required as part of the final engineering submittal, but we've already kind of looked at the stormwater in regard to its site layout and location.
Let me ask you this question. Will there be less water going into Brush Run after your development, or more?
We'll be meeting your stormwater requirements for this region, so, Chris, I'm not sure.
I don't believe there's a reduction,
Yeah.
so it'll be the same.
Yeah.
It'll be the same.
It'll be more volume, but it'll be at the same rate. So the question is the HECRAS. That's really at the crux of this, the engineering analysis.
Yes.
And if you wouldn't mind coming up, I got a couple of questions that may help answer Commissioner Mills' question.
Please introduce yourself.
Chris Ham with KDH Consulting Engineers. First, whenever we did our HECRAS analysis of the site, and we compared it, the highest elevation raised through the site as far as the stream goes is right, it really backs up a little additional here in this area here before it gets off property, and it's about 1/2 foot. At either downstream or upstream at the property lines, we are back to the existing floodplain basically. But when we ran our post-construction analysis for the HECRAS, we took into account the paving and the building, basically with no additional stormwater management there. That, the CN numbers we used for.
Right, but, okay, so start at the beginning. So we have a 0 net increase in the base flood elevation at the upstream property line.
Yes.
Okay. We have a 0 net increase at the downstream property line of the base flood elevation.
Yes.
Could you show the downstream property line which we analyzed? Is that next to lot 1, or is that at the dessert cafe? Because I'm not sure there's a property line there on your, just so I.
All site plan.
There you go.
It is at this line.
Okay, so there could be an increase on the cafe side possibly, but your highest point is just upstream of the building. That's half.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's through this area mostly, and there you can kind of see. If you just look at it, you can kind of see this area right here. Pretty much is where there's some additional. I don't want to say additional flooding, but this low spot is where.
Sure.
It will back up a little bit, but by the time it makes it to this property line, we are back to a net zero.
Gotcha. And what's the increase approximately at the building and parking lot area?
About a half a foot.
About a half a foot. So instead of the base flood elevation being 949.5, you're about 950.
Well, the base flood elevation doesn't change.
Well, your revised flood elevation because you're putting.
We didn't, since we're not impacting the floodway, and the base flood elevation is actually associated with the floodway, not the floodplain.
I understand.
Our base flood elevation does not change. The floodplain elevation through that area stays roughly the same elevation, but it does rise a half foot through that area. It does come up farther.
950.
Yeah, we'll say 950.
Gotcha. So then you're at 953.5 for your first floor.
Yeah, we're well above the base flood elevation of a foot and a half.
Gotcha. Does the egress out of the south side, lack of a better term, that sidewalk, is all above your 951.5? I'm calling it. It's almost
Yes,
like an RFE that's increased because of your increase in the base flood.
If you look at the new, and it's in the new report,
I haven't read
the entire site, the parking lot and the building is actually outside of our calculated floodplain.
Gotcha. So what I'm trying to establish is that through your analysis, they've seen that the water would raise in the real water, if you will, the base flood, will raise a half a foot. And then FEMA requires you should increase that 1.5 for a bit of freeboard, they call it regulatory flood elevation. And above that, you're essentially free to build what you like from a FEMA perspective. Would you concur?
Yes.
So what I'm seeing is that most of this development, in fact, is there any development that's paved and will be occupied by a use below the elevation 951.5? It's really just this corner here. In some of these parking spaces that I would say 22 to 34 on the south side.
Yeah, there might just be a pretty
Just a touch.
We really don't see the 952 contour.
Elevation's a little bit lower.
I actually take that back. There will be a significant amount of parking lot and possibly ADA spaces. Do you have a more detailed grading plan identified?
Well, this
Yeah, that's fine.
the green is actually the calculated floodway.
Uh-huh.
And you can see that the entire parking lot is actually outside of our calculated floodway.
Right, I understand that. I'm just looking for the RFE, the regulatory flood elevation, which is 1.5 feet above the BFE.
Yeah.
So if you were to increase the actual BFE by 0.5, which I understand that's not.
Yeah, we're still, the actual entire parking lot still will be above the BFE.
Right, but it's not above the revised RFE, if we look at that, which is the regulatory flood elevation of 1.5 feet above, which is allowed per code.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to understand specifically, because I don't have any issue, just speaking quite candidly, with filling in the floodplain suffices. We're not going to cause any upstream or downstream impacts, right? So filling it in, I'm okay with that because you have hydraulic capacity on your site to accommodate that restriction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we're putting buildings in the floodplain, again, you're above the RFE.
Yes.
And I really don't have any issue with that as long as you're above that regulatory flood elevation, which you presumably are per your plan. Specific, what I'm trying to understand is the amount of parking that'll be underneath that RFE because of the medical use of the building.
Like you meant, if you want to go with the 1.5 feet above.
Yeah, I mean, that's your
UVFE.
freeboard, that's
Yeah,
FEMA's slot.
that, you were probably correct. It would probably be spaces 28 through 23.
Well, if we assume that that revised, we're going to call it, or proposed RFE, if you did a Clomar or a Lomar, you would be at 151.5 would be your RFE. So technically, anything below 951.5 would be subject to flood forces.
Yes.
So that could, so I'd like to understand where that exists on your site, because I'm seeing a 152 contour and a 150 contour, and if we look at that, it's a little, it's kind of that center
The
portion.
150 would probably be coming through the drive aisle between parking spaces 23 through 32 and 33 through 40.
Yeah, you're going to be in here.
Yes.
So really, I would just make it a broad brush. 57 all the way around the corner there through 22 in the middle section would all be possibly below the RFE.
Yes.
That's a higher
Which-
elevation here. and it
Yeah.
falls
Yeah.
down.
For the commissioners, the consideration is typically provided if the vehicles are road ready, right? Because we should not experience a flash flood event here, so typically it would be something we understand could be coming. And you could conceivably remove those cars, they wouldn't float. Seems like the dumpster's out of that
Yes.
area, and your emergency egress is out of that area.
Yes.
I would make sure that that is
Yes.
specific, because this is a medical office building, that is something that is a requirement. Flood velocities, was there an uptick in flood velocity?
I will have to look back through. I think there might have been a slight on a couple of our, just past the parking lot, but it was a net zero by the time it reached the property line again.
So in the downstream property, there's no net increase in the flood velocity, so there shouldn't be any increase in erosion downstream
No.
based on your property. When you analyzed your HECRAS, I just know this as I go through this all day. When you analyzed the HECRAS, did you look at what happens during your stormwater discharge if you combine the peaks? Do the peaks align? What happens to your stormwater discharge?
We
What happens to
did-
your HECRAS when you discharge your stormwater?
When we ran our HECRAS, we basically just looked at ground cover. We did not look at, with our peaks, with the district, because currently the stormwater system's not designed. So we have not done any actual stormwater management on this, and we don't know where our peak is coming off of our proposed stormwater system. So the answer to that is no.
So what that means is essentially that we're going to have this rush of water go through, that we're advising, and then we're going to actually take more water because we're holding it back. That peak's going to come down through the river or the creek, and then we're going to be discharging water, so it's going to elevate it even more. So that would just be one thing that I would encourage our engineers just to take a real close look at. A couple things I noted that, as far as the space below the first floor, I mean, you're going to do that as dry flood proof. That's typical W1, W2 classification. We won't have any outdoor storage here, correct, other than vehicles and the dumpster?
No.
Got it.
Correct.
The velocity is not erosive, dumpster, medical office building. Yeah, I would like to know what kind of medical office building. That would be my only concern, but it seems like the design to me would have adequate egress, an emergency egress from the building, which probably isn't designed yet.
No.
Right, so any emergency egress from this building should be above the
We
RFE.
can add that as a
We need to
condition.
make that a condition. And there was another, the dumpster needs to be,
Dumpster needs to be above what I would call the revised RFE or the proposed RFE.
add that as a condition.
Yep.
It's essentially
No outdoor storage.
no outdoor storage.
Keep going, we'll add some more conditions.
And then any HECRAS analysis be updated with your proposed stormwater management. You may have to over-detain or under-detain based upon your allowable release rates and non-erosive losses.
Is that a condition?
I would say that would be a comment on our stormwater, just a comment to the engineer who reviews the stormwater management. Yeah.
By the way, we have Josh Galen with Gateway Engineers back there, so he's taking it all in here.
And if I may add one thing, we know we need to come back for site plan approval and detailed engineering. One of our issues in regard to is really getting the variances so that Mr. Robinson can market this plan. One of the issues of marketing the plan is making sure that you have the variances first. So, which is why we're looking at this first conditions first, and we'll provide that additional detail with final land development.
Elevator pits, you know all about that with the stormwater man, with the HECRAS, and that's it. I would just, as long as we're complying with FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers, and we get that final elevation certificate, I would say the only question that I would have is just, I'm still considering the medical office building is something that is a bit concerning to me, given that it says specifically in our code.
It says what?
Specifically in our code, it talks about the not medical office building, but I think it was hospitals, and a couple other uses that are intended, that are similar for building in a floodplain, although you're only very small square footage.
I think that one section, you go back there, one more. So, it was hospitals, not necessarily medical office buildings, nursing homes, and jails and prisons. Medical office building is not, a hospital. It's not permitted.
What about a surgical center, ambulatory surgical center?
As long as it's out of the floodplain, it's fine. And only 250 square feet of this building is in the floodplain, but it's also going to be elevated.
The term floodplain is a width thing, and really we got to be looking at height. That's the real
It just
question.
seems like to me that the 100-year floodplain, it's really, it should, it just seems like it's flooding so often around here anymore.
It is. There's definitely an increase.
It just doesn't even seem like...
And that's one of the reasons why we talk about the regulatory floodplain, which is another 1.5 feet above.
Okay.
So it gives you a bit of freeboard or a bit of kind of FEMA didn't get everything correct, which is why we have that 1.5 foot of, lack of a better term, buffer.
Do you view this plan that could flood Valley Brook Road more?
I don't think the flooding from Valley Brook Road is occurring because of brush run. I think it's causing from the upstream drainage, because I think the flooding occurs on the right-hand side if you're going towards
That
19.
little past the VFW and the veterinary hospital. I mean, how are we ever going to address that?
Well, there's an undersized pipe between Mortland and the new waters that everything kind of gets jammed up and debris gets clogged in there. That's what causes that flooding up there.
Huh.
So it's not a backup from brush run.
Very rarely is it a backup from brush run. During Ivan it was, but these storms that we get, it's not rising out of Brush Run Creek. It is caused by that
Stormwater backup.
that undersized pipe under Valley Brook Road between Mortland and the waters.
Can we fix that? A couple slides.
Which, forward or back?
It just seems like it's constant.
Back one more. Yeah, and that's that area right along through here.
Yeah, it's like twice every...
It's actually, right there where, right there.
Where the vet office
Right
is,
there.
isn't it? The vet.
Yeah. And you can see how close Brush Run is in relationship to Valley Brook Road, and then the parking lot of the veterinary and the VFW becomes, I'll say, an hourglass.
Hourglass.
Can we go to the revised plan that we were showing? I just want to have a question. What's the difference between what was on what we received and the new version?
Oh, that was on your plan, except I don't have that on the PowerPoint.
Well, I think I can speak to what was on ours, but we don't have to compare and contrast necessarily. I mean, I appreciate that you all changed the building and made it smaller. And in the one we received, it looked like there was a sizable patio, probably for employee use or patient use on the back side of this building. And I see that there's still a section or a space between the building and the
property
easement at the back. And my question is, can you speak to why? It looks like you could almost move that building back and get it out of the actual floodplain. And can you speak to why you didn't do that or didn't?
Well, we show that as when we go through and do the final permitting for for the site and
Yeah.
really land development, that we might be able to get a little bit larger building in regard to the
Okay.
HOP. So if we wanted to be up front, that we might have, and you, once again, you have that little bump out that
Right,
occurs
yeah.
right now. That's, and so if we end up sliding all the way back, and we also have a hourglass with the sanitary line.
Right, yeah, and there's a lot going on in that.
You know, that makes that turn off and drop off start to get very narrow, and then you end up having a much longer walkway to
Yeah.
get back to the front entrance. So we went to what would be considered our least intrusive modification,
Yeah.
from 960 square feet to 250 square.
No, like I said, I think, I appreciate that you all revised and took that into consideration. I saw it as different on what we were showing as what we received, and I just wanted to for you to
Yeah,
speak
that one
about it.
slide that Seth did showed clearly where we made the changes between the larger building and larger parking lot down to a smaller facility.
You mentioned there is a space below the lowest floor. Is that occupied or unoccupied, or what you said was going to be dry flood proofed? The basement.
No, there'll be a two-story building, so the first floor will all be above, you know.
There's no basement.
There's no basement.
Got it.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, there is no basement.
And the first floor is the FFE you're talking about here.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. This is very typical. I think our ordinance is a bit heavy-handed when it comes to floodplain, for good reason. But I think that if the engineering analysis proves out that there's no net increase off the property, I mean, then all the quote-unquote additional flood risk is kept on this property, which seems appropriate if the developer chooses to do so, in my humble opinion.
And where does Brush Run run into?
Chartiers. Chartiers Creek.
At what point? Right after 19?
Right where the bridge on Valley Brook crosses Chartiers Creek. The purple bridge, is it still purple? Lavender?
No. It meets at 19 when it crosses over. Or the harvest.
The Brush Run Creek intersects Chartiers Creek at our border between Cecil and Peters at the Lavender Bridge on Valley Brook Road.
Right past
Federich's Sons.
Oh, okay. So it'll run into Chartiers Creek in front of, around Valley Brook? Does it eventually come into Valley Brook?
It's downstream of Valley Brook Country Club.
It's downstream.
Yes.
Any other commissioner questions, comments? Any other audience comments?
And this is a recommendation of the zoning hearing board.
Correct.
The Seth's presentation included what, how many, 9?
9. I think we've got 2 additional from Rocco.
Go ahead.
You'll have to help me out on the abbreviation there at the end, but emergency building egress outside of the RFE?
Yeah, so the
Revised.
emergency building egress
Yep.
shall be 1.5 feet above the calculated flood elevation. And I'm using that a little loose because I want it to, the base flood elevation is defined by FEMA.
Okay.
So the revised flood elevation is that which the engineers calculate through HECRES. And that what that's basically doing is resetting that value and then providing 1.5 feet, which is the standard for freeboard, above the revised flood elevation.
So, okay.
That's 10.
That'd be condition 10. Condition 11, you were just flat out no outdoor storage?
No outdoor storage.
Okay.
Within the flood plain area.
Got it.
And that would include the dumpster. Let me rephrase that. No outdoor storage below 1.5 feet above the revised calculated flood elevation. We just need everything to be 1.5 feet above the revised water. That's really the crux.
So basically, they could put a dumpster on a platform and the truck come back in and take, just so it's 1.5 feet above.
Yeah,
that.
and it looked like the grading plan,
Or
that's
the
going to be
parking lot
accurate.
is, yeah, it's showing that way. And
Yes.
and that parking
It
lot
looks
is
like it's going to be
above
fine. We just don't want dumpsters floating down Brush Run. On fire. That's what's seen on 51.
Okay.
We'll have a gate.
Rocco, that covered your additional conditions?
He made a
Yeah,
comment about,
The only other comment I would have is the first floor elevation be 1.5 feet above the revised calculated water elevation. That's basically everything.
That's number 5.
Yeah, that's one of the 9. Well, it says the BFE. We want to make sure, it says the base flood elevation. We want to make sure we're taking into account, because when we construct the improvements, it's going to raise the water. So we're not doing a revised, we're not doing a LOMAR, which revises the actual base flood elevation based upon the calculations. We just want to make sure that we're taking into account. So we're basically, it's 2 feet based upon what we hear the calculations are above the base flood elevation.
and Rocky, you had a comment about their stormwater management being taken into consideration with stormwater peak in regard to the peak.
Their HEC-RES,
flood.
yes.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
just
would
a
go through
comment
land
for
development.
engineering review.
Yes, that would be something they look at through land development.
Okay.
It may increase your HEC-RAS, which would change your grading permit, but the variance would
Would be
presumably still be
effectively-
awarded, and you still be opposed to those requirements. So even if the flood elevation rises, we still want to keep 1.5 feet above that elevation.
Is that a motion?
Excuse the long-windedness.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. All right, that brings us to the planning portion. Are there any miscellaneous issues?
No.
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 All right. Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.
Okay.